Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm not sure if you guys watch Dr. Phil, right? I've never really been a fan of the show. So I can't say how the show used to be in the past, but Dr. Phil has basically become a political talk show, right? It's become a political debate show, and I kind of like the direction that it's going in, okay? I think that he's having some great conversations on that show when it comes to both sides of issues in this country. And in this exchange right here, Dr. Phil had to show his own bias, right, in terms of how he feels about an issue when it came to the defund the police issue. And I don't blame Dr. Phil, because a vast majority of Americans in this country, even liberals, okay, feel the same way that Dr. Phil feels about this issue of defund the police. As there was a woke activist on the show who, of course, was coming up here spewing this nonsense, this rhetoric about how we don't need police and how he's a victim and how criminals are not at fault for the crimes that they commit because it's all the white man's fault. It's society's fault. And yada, 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 right? We all know the woke talking points that they use to justify defunding the police. Dr. Phil wasn't having it, right? He actually set this woke activist straight with a reality check on why we need police. It is absolutely glorious. Take a look.
What your question is presuming is a world as it exists currently, right? And so when I say, oh, I don't believe there's a need for police, what I'm saying is that there has been so little investment in creating the conditions under which police would not be necessary. And that is the issue. That is the holistic issue. And people are creations of the society in which they live in. And if you are a society that has such massive inequality, and you are a society that is based on racial and gendered hierarchies, and you are a society that deprives people of the resources that they need to live, talking about housing, clean water, food, all of these things that are part of an equitable society. You're talking about people that will do desperate things in order to survive. And so you're not solving anything by arresting those people. You're not solving anything by shooting and killing those people.
I agree with you 100% on society's failures about how that person became a criminal. My point is we also live in the here and now. And if someone invades my home and has my wife held hostage in the bedroom tonight,
Sure.
I don't give two about where they came from tonight. What I care about is a solution tonight. That doesn't mean that we don't need to solve the problem so my grandchildren don't get held hostage in their bedrooms 20 years from now. But when you say we don't need police because of developmental failures, that doesn't solve the problems that are occurring tonight, tomorrow night, the next night. Those things have to be dealt with.
I hear you. I truly, and I'm not being facetious, I hear you. That is the fear that continues to drive us toward more policing.
No, that is the reality in which we live. That's not a fear.
Yes,
fear
yes,
is the anxiety or anticipation of something that may happen. What I'm describing is something that is happening, and we have to have guardrails. We have to have someone to turn to. We have to have someone on the end of 911.
Yeah, that was amazing, right? Dr. Phil is so annoyed by this guy and his cuckoo for Cocoa Puff unicorn reality that he had to curse, right? He said, I don't give a ish. Maybe he said, I don't give a F, right? But if my wife is being held hostage in my house, I want police there ASAP. And I think 99.999% of people in this country feel that way, right? And this is why the defund the police movement in the Democrat Party and in the progressive space is so unpopular, right? Because most people know the reality that we live in the sense that we have criminals who are out here committing crimes who, again, if something happens, you need police, right? Now, again, some people argue that, police only show up after the fact or whatever, but I think that most people agree that police, at the very least, are preventative. Even though, sometimes they may not show up on time. They show up after the crime is committed. I get that. But at the very least, they are preventative. And they do go after the criminals once they commit the crimes. They do the investigations, which is responsible for getting the criminals off the street. But in this guy's world, right, he probably wants to let all the criminals out on the street because they can do no wrong, right? They're not inherently bad. They're only bad because the white man made them bad, right? Society made them bad. There's so much sexism and bigotry and racism in society. That's the only reason they're committing these crimes, right? They're committing crimes out of desperation. We've heard these arguments before. And this is why I think that all these woke activists, they need to really go spend time in a developing or a third world country for at least a week. You will see what real poverty and real desperation looks like, okay? In the United States of America, and people could disagree with me at this if you want, but I just from my experience, seeing the world, we don't have like actual true abject poverty here in the United States. It doesn't exist. I mean, even our homeless are living pretty good compared to the homeless in some of these other countries around the world. Okay. If you go to some of these other countries, these third world countries, the homeless, like they actually look like, frail, right? They're frail. Okay. They're not fat. We got homeless that are fat, right? We got our homeless that are fat. When you got homeless people that are fat, I'm just saying, your homelessness problem, again, is relative, right? The desperation is relative. For the most part, most people from a calorie standpoint are pretty well fed in this country, okay? Even if you are living in poverty, right? And if that is the reality, then to me, I don't think that desperation is an excuse. Nobody's so desperate that they have to go commit a crime. They have to rob somebody or kill somebody or steal something. No, nobody's that desperate. They do it because they want to do it. And we just have to admit that some of these people are inherently bad people. They're just criminals, and they should be locked up and thrown in jail, and they shouldn't be a part of society. I'm sick and tired of these woke revolutionaries making excuses for these criminals, trying to act like nothing's their fault, right? The magic solution is to just defund the police, to take all the money out of the police force and invest it in these communities, and voila, all these people are going to become good, right? And I just don't think that's the case. I really don't. And besides that, these people are trying to put the cart before the horse, in the sense that how in the world can businesses and economic opportunity thrive in some of these inner cities, okay, these crime-ridden neighborhoods, when you don't have police, right? When you have criminals run these neighborhoods. I mean, I've done so many stories about businesses that have had to shut down, that have literally had to close up because they've been robbed too much, right? People have been stealing from them too much. There's been too much theft, right? Again, how is that supposed to work? If you take all the police out of the neighborhood, if you defund the police, what do you think is going to happen to these businesses? They're just going to get robbed out of existence. And then there will still be no economic activity. I don't care how much government spending that you do. If there's no police there, if there's no preventative measures there, no entrepreneur is going to want to invest in any neighborhood. It's really that simple. But again, because these people live in cuckoo for Cocoa Puff world, they think that these people are not inherently bad, that, everything they do is not their fault. It's the fault of the white man in society. They really do believe that defunding the police is just going to solve all the problems. Well, you just need to pour more money, right? You need more government. And the issue is that the problem is that we have too much government, right? It's not that we need more, it's that we have too much. Like, for example, we all know that a predictor of crime is single motherhood, right? Most of these criminals come from single parent household. Again, mainly single mothers. Well, who's incentivized single motherhood the most? The government, right? Either through locking up black men for petty crimes, right? Which I think is an issue. I'm very pro being hard on people for serious crimes, but not for necessarily non-violent, drug offenses and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily cool with that. I'm not on that Joe Biden train. But I'm just saying the government, through basically incentivizing women to marry the government and not their man, not to have a man in the household, basically making a man expendable, from an income standpoint, that has, again, been a prime driver of poverty and crime in these neighborhoods because there's no fathers in homes, right? There's no man in the household teaching these young men how to raise men, right? Again, I have no issues with single mothers. I get it. That's a hard job, right? But a single mother cannot raise a man for the most part. It's very hard. It's very difficult. Again, shout out to all the single mothers that try, right? I commend you for it. But a lot of these children are growing up in emotional and chaotic environments, again, led by women. And this is leading them to go out there and to live a life of crime, making emotional decisions. And that is what's plaguing these neighborhoods. And it is a cycle that continues to happen generation after generation after generation. And until you break that generational cycle, that generational curse, you're not going to see any changes. Defunding the police has nothing to do with breaking this curse, breaking this cycle of poverty, and actually solving the real issues that are leading to crime. It's not the government underinvesting in these neighborhoods. That's not what's leading to the poverty and the crime. The problem is that you got too much government involved in incentivizing women not to have men in the house. That's really what the real issue is. But again, the woke activists don't really want to address that because, as you can tell, this guy, again, is probably a male feminist, right? He believes in the strong woman, okay? And it's just, again, it's just baloney, right? It's nonsense. It's nonsense. And this is why these guys, they lack real solutions, right? I don't understand how anybody takes these people seriously. If they had it their way, we already see the result, right? Look at the West Coast, the left coast. Look at Seattle. Look at Portland, Oregon. Look at Los Angeles. Look at Oakland. Look at San Francisco. Look at Chicago. Look at all these liberal cities across the country that have bought into this woke ideology, and look at the result, right? They're hellholes, okay? Businesses can't thrive there. They can't operate there. Because of woke revolutionaries like this that think that, oh, well, criminals should just get, a slap on the wrist and, is nothing's their fault and it's all white supremacy and we need to defund the police and we need to, do this and do that. And it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. So, again, I'm not surprised to see Dr. Phil here who, hey, he seems like a reasonable guy, right? At least on some issues. Align with most of the American people, even though, Dr. Phil might be a little woke on some issues, right? He aligns with most American people on this issue of, I want the police around, right? If something happens to my home or if I find myself, in a bad situation dealing with a criminal, I do want the police to be available to call in situations like that. And I think most people agree with that. Again, it surprises me that a lot of these woke revolutionaries aren't, more libertarian about this, right? Because if you're going to defund the police, these should be the most pro-2A, pro-gun people in this country, right? They should be advocating for, gun rights, for people to protect themselves. But no, they're actually trying to take guns, which that is what really blows my mind about this. Is one thing if they went the full libertarian route on this and said, you know what, we want to defund the police and we just want these communities to protect themselves, right? We just let the communities deal with the criminals and the gang members and we'll run our own stuff. Hey, I'd be like, well, at the very least, you're providing a real alternative solution for how people can protect themselves, right? But the whole defund the police thing, being anti-2A and anti-self-defense, again, this is how you end up like, some of these inner liberal cities that have turned into absolute disasters. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.